My world shattered when, following my son's funeral, my daughter-in-law tossed me out like garbage. She sneered at me during the will reading. "You won't get a single penny from your son's estate." "I'll make sure of it." But the attorney simply smiled and said, "There is an additional clause, the most crucial one." As he read it, my daughter-in-law collapsed. You will not believe what it said. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. At last, I can get some rest. Leo was so demanding to look after these past few months. The words splashed over me like frigid water. I stood motionless next to my son's coffin, the memorial booklet shaking in my grasp. Claire glanced at her phone again, scrolling through notifications as if she hadn't just described my deceased son as a weight she was finally free of. "Claire," my voice broke in the biting April air, "we just laid my son to rest. Could you show a little decency for the dead?" She gazed up from her device, a flash of annoyance crossing her impeccably applied makeup. A gust of wind swept through the cemetery, blowing the yellow roses Helen had set on adjacent headstones. The other attendees were heading toward their vehicles, but their quiet conversations had ceased. They were all listening now. "Your son?" Claire's laugh was brittle and sharp. "He was my husband, Arthur, and everything he owned is now mine." The funeral booklet crumpled in my fist. My analytical mind, always so orderly, couldn't make sense of what I was hearing. This woman had been Leo's partner for 7 years. She had vowed to cherish him in sickness and in health. But here she was, not 30 minutes after he was lowered into the earth, speaking of assets and property. "What is wrong with you?" I murmured, though my voice projected more than I'd meant. "Could you at least feign some sadness?" Sam Peterson, Leo's business associate, had paused his walk. He was about 20 feet away, his hand on his wife's arm. They both stared at us, their shock unconcealed. Helen Bishop was approaching, her expression pale with worry. Claire slid her phone into her luxury handbag. "Sad, Arthur? I've been organizing my new life for months." Leo was aware this marriage was finished. We both were. "That's a lie." The words tore from my throat. "He adored you. Even when he was sick?" "The illness was convenient," she said, adjusting her designer black coat, the one Leo had given her last year for their anniversary. "It afforded me the time to consider my options, to make plans. Now I can finally start living again." Helen got to us just as Claire pivoted toward the parking lot. "Claire, please, this is neither the time nor the place." "Actually, Helen, this is precisely the time." Claire's heels echoed on the paved walkway. "I've wasted 18 months pretending to be the supportive wife. I'm through with the act." The few remaining guests had formed small groups, muttering to each other. Mrs. Davies from our church slowly shook her head. The 3 colleagues from Leo's software team looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting their weight and staring at the ground. I observed Claire walking away, her gait firm and resolute. She hadn't produced a single tear throughout the entire service. While I had struggled to maintain my composure reading the eulogy, she had remained in the front row, glancing at her watch and drumming her painted nails on the polished wood. "Arthur?" Helen's hand gently touched my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I was unable to respond. My throat felt raw, abraded by disbelief and a rising tide of fury. The woman Leo had entrusted with his life, his company, his heart. She had been counting down to his death, mapping out her new life, while he fought for every single breath. The wind blew harder, shaking the leafless branches above him. Claire reached her black Audi, the car Leo had gifted her for their 5th anniversary. She never looked back. As I stood there by my son's gravesite, I couldn't help but wonder what Leo would think if he could see her now. Would he be devastated, furious, or had he suspected what I was just now starting to grasp? The luxury sedan pulled away, vanishing around a bend in the cemetery road. I was by myself now, aside from Helen waiting patiently nearby, and the grounds crew in the distance, getting ready to fill the grave. My hands were still unsteady as I gazed at Leo's photo in the creased booklet. His smile was warm and self-assured, just as he had always been, just as he was even in those last weeks, making cryptic calls to Martin Cole and assuring me that everything was being handled. Looking at Leo's face in that photo, something inside my chest cracked open. It wasn't just grief this time, but something more profound. It was pride mingled with a desperate wish for one more conversation with my brilliant son. The wind blew more petals over the newly turned soil. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to remember. Leo, age 8, in our garage workshop, model cement on his fingers and resolve in his bright eyes. He had insisted on painting his model aircraft blue and orange instead of the realistic gray and olive green from the instruction booklet. "Dad, why do planes have to be gray?" he'd asked, presenting his vibrant blue fighter plane. "I want to make mine stand out, unique." Even back then, he rejected conformity. While other children assembled their models exactly by the book, Leo innovated. He would alter wing shapes, tweak landing gear, and invent his own paint jobs. Half his creations crashed on their maiden flights, but the ones that soared were magnificent. I opened my eyes and looked at the picture again. That very same defiant creativity had earned him millions. A family dinner at the University of Colorado in 2015. Leo was outlining his newest business venture, gesturing animatedly with his fork. His mother had passed away the year prior, and our Sunday dinners had become a cherished ritual. "I have this concept for an app to help people manage their schedules more effectively," he'd said, his eyes alight with excitement. "But more than just a calendar, Dad. Something that learns your habits, anticipates your needs, and helps you use your time more wisely." I was afraid his ambitions were too grand. "Son, there are already so many scheduling apps." "But none that think like a person," he'd countered, sketching out interfaces on a napkin. "What if tech could truly simplify our lives instead of making them more complex?" That application became Momentum AI. Within 2 years, he sold it for $15 million. But the memory that stung the most was from just 3 years ago. Leo had driven to my home in Brookside, showing up unannounced on a Tuesday night with a bottle of champagne and news that altered everything. "Dad, I'm going to support you in your retirement. You've worked long enough." He showed me the latest valuation for his company, Nexus Core Dynamics. $80 million, Dad, can you believe it? I couldn't. My son, the boy who once built blue airplanes in my garage, had created a company worth more than I had earned in my entire career as a structural engineer. "Leo, that's amazing. But I don't need—" "Yes, you do?" His voice was firm, yet kind. "You've looked after me my entire life. It's my turn to return the favor. I'm building you that workshop you've always talked about, the one with the proper dust collection and all the tools you've ever wanted." That workshop now stood in my backyard, mostly unused since his diagnosis. I had been too occupied with his care to build anything. Helen coughed softly. "Arthur, it's getting chilly. Perhaps we should go," I shook my head. I wasn't ready to leave him, not when these memories were all that remained of his voice, his laugh, his unwavering belief that everything would be all right. Leo was always a planner. As a boy, he organized his days, his projects, and his ambitions with the same engineering precision that I had. He got that from me, the drive to know how things operated, to solve issues before they escalated. But this was one issue he couldn't resolve, one schedule he couldn't manage. The memory I'd been pushing away all day surfaced. Leo's phone call 18 months ago, his voice firm despite the news that would upend everything we had planned. "Dad, I have cancer, but I'm going to fight this." Standing in the cemetery's biting wind, I knew I had to remember that struggle too, not just the happy moments, but the fight that revealed my son's true character and his wife's. The call that altered our world arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 2022. I was mending a neighbor's fence when Leo phoned, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "Dad, I have cancer, but I'm going to fight this." Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The diagnosis felt like a series of hammer blows, aggressive, advanced, with a grim prognosis. I dropped my tools and drove immediately to Denver General Hospital, where Leo was meeting his oncology team. He seemed smaller in the hospital bed, but his gaze was resolute. Claire sat next to him, perfectly calm, already typing notes into her phone about treatment timetables. "The doctors believe chemo could give us 18 months, maybe 2 years if it works well," Leo had said, his business mind already analyzing possibilities. "I've made arrangements for Sam to oversee daily operations at Nexus Core." Dr. Evans detailed the treatment plan. Aggressive chemotherapy every 3 weeks, potential surgery if the tumors shrank, and radiation to control pain. Leo listened as if planning a product rollout, asking precise questions about success rates and side effects. "I'll take you to your treatments," I had offered instantly. Claire looked up from her phone. "Actually, Arthur, I can manage his medical appointments. You don't have to worry." But within a few months, her attitude had shifted dramatically. By March 2023, Leo was halfway through his chemo, and the side effects were harsh. He'd lost 30 pounds and most of his hair, but he still insisted on attending crucial business meetings. I had been driving him to every appointment because Claire had begun making excuses. "I can't bear to see this anymore," she told me one afternoon while Leo slept after a chemo infusion. "You're better at looking after him anyway. He needs someone with more fortitude right now." Fortitude? As if caring for my son through his illness was a chore rather than a privilege. By that summer, I had moved into their spare bedroom. Leo required help with simple things: preparing meals he could tolerate, organizing his medications, and getting to treatments when he was too exhausted to drive. Claire had isolated herself in her home office, asserting that she was handling the emotional toll by keeping busy. The reality was much simpler. She was plotting her departure. I would overhear her on calls with real estate agents, talking about property values and market conditions. She had looked into divorce lawyers, though she never filed. Why go through the trouble when cancer would solve her problem for her? "How much longer will this go on?" she asked me one night in October while Leo rested upstairs. "I have plans to make, Arthur. I can't suspend my life forever." I just stared at her, speechless. My son was fighting for his life, and she was annoyed by the disruption. But Leo had seen more than I gave him credit for. In his final month, when the treatments were no longer effective and hospice care had started, he scheduled mysterious meetings with Martin Cole, his estate attorney. They would confer in Leo's office for hours, reviewing documents I wasn't permitted to see. "Dad, I've secured your future," he told me during one of our last lucid conversations. His voice was faint, but his eyes were sharp with intent. "Trust Martin. He will clarify everything after I'm gone. Leo, you don't need to worry about me. Just concentrate on getting well." I'm not getting well. His frankness was stark and clean, like everything about him. "But I've made sure Claire can't harm you or anyone else who is important to me." I didn't grasp his meaning at the time. Now, sitting by his grave as the groundskeepers approached with their shovels, I started to think my son had been orchestrating one final project, the most significant one of his life. The wind was getting stronger, and the last of the mourners were gone. Helen had returned to her car, giving me some space. Soon I would have to leave Leo in the cold earth and go back to a world where Claire thought she had won. But something in my son's last words hinted that the contest wasn't finished. The crunch of gravel sounded behind me. I turned to see Sam Peterson approaching with Helen and two other colleagues, their faces grim with sincere grief. These were the people who had genuinely cared for Leo, unlike the woman standing 15 feet away, still absorbed in her phone. "Arthur?" Sam offered his hand, his grip solid and reassuring. Leo was a genius. His company transformed the entire sector, the way he reimagined project management software. We'll never see a mind like his again. Before I could answer, Claire's voice sliced through the cold air. "Yes, and now that genius is finally going to pay off?" She looked up from her device with a smug smile. "All those years of effort are about to reward the right person." Sam's face paled. Helen moved closer to me, her protective instincts on high alert. The other colleagues shared uneasy looks, suddenly captivated by their own shoes. "Claire," I said softly, "these people are here to pay their respects to Leo." "Oh, I'm respecting him," she retorted, sliding her phone into her bag with a deliberate motion, "by ensuring his success isn't squandered on sentimentality." Dr. Emily Rios, one of Leo's senior developers, cleared her throat. "We should probably get back to the office. We have projects that need attention." "Actually," Claire said, her voice acquiring a falsely bright tone, "there won't be any projects for a bit. I'll be restructuring things as soon as the legalities are sorted out." Sam's jaw clenched. "Claire, Leo founded that company with clear objectives. His team knows how to. His team reports to me now. She checked her luxury watch, the one Leo had bought for their anniversary. Everything reports to me now. Helen discreetly slipped a small folded paper into my hand, her phone number neatly written on it. "If you need anything at all," she whispered, "don't hesitate to call." I nodded, grateful, and put the paper in my coat pocket. At least one person in this world still understood common decency. The remaining guests made their awkward exits, offering hurried condolences before making their way to the parking lot. Mrs. Davies shook her head as she walked past Claire, her disapproval evident. The young pastor who had led the service looked like he wanted to intervene, but then decided against it. Within 10 minutes, only Claire and I were left at Leo's grave. The temperature was dropping as evening neared, and my breath fogged in the air. She seemed impervious to the cold, fueled by an inner fire I was just starting to comprehend. "Arthur?" Her tone changed, becoming brisk and sharp. "We should talk about your housing situation." An icy knot formed in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about where you live." She took out her car keys, jingling them impatiently. "We can sort this out at the house. There's some paperwork you should see." The way she said paperwork set my analytical mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Leo had been so meticulous about everything else. Could he have overlooked protecting me from his own wife? "Claire, I've been living in that house for 18 months ever since Leo fell ill." "Yes." Her smile was as sharp as the winter wind. "And now Leo is gone." She turned and walked to her black Audi, her heels clicking on the pavement with robotic precision. I watched her confident walk, the way she moved like someone who had already secured victory in a game I hadn't known we were playing. Standing alone by my son's grave, I felt the first true fear I'd known since his diagnosis. Leo had told me to trust Martin, but Martin wasn't here. The only person with answers was walking away toward a car that cost more than my yearly pension. I glanced at Leo's picture one last time, then carefully folded the booklet and placed it in my jacket pocket next to Helen's number. Whatever Claire had in store for me, I was about to find out. The 15-minute drive to Brookside was spent in a tense, suffocating quiet. Claire kept the radio off, her polished nails drumming a rhythm on the steering wheel, counting down to something. I watched the familiar Denver suburbs pass by the window, each street corner a reminder of drives taken with Leo. As we pulled into the circular driveway of the Vance family estate, my headlights illuminated something that made my breath catch. 3 large suitcases were sitting on the porch as if they had been abandoned. "What are those?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Claire parked the car with methodical precision and shut off the engine. "Your things are by the door. This house belongs to me now." I stared at the suitcases, my brain struggling to accept what I was seeing. "Claire, this is illegal. I'm a legal resident here. This is my official address." She got out of the car and strode to the front door, pulling out her keys. "You should read the rental agreement, Arthur. Leo rented you a room. The lease terminated upon his death. Rental agreement." I followed her up the stone steps, my legs feeling unsteady. "What rental agreement?" Instead of unlocking the door, she took a manila folder from her purse. Inside were several pages of legal papers, neatly typed, with Leo's signature from a year ago. "Room rental agreement," she read, her voice sharp with triumph. "Month-to-month tenancy between landlord Leo Vance and tenant Arthur Vance. Automatic termination upon the death of the landlord." My hands trembled as I looked at the documents under the porch light. Leo's signature appeared genuine. The dates were correct. The legal text was precise. "We just buried your husband," I said, my voice thick with disbelief. "And now my new life can start." She stood in the doorway, arms folded, blocking my path into the house where I had nursed my dying son. "Without you, Leo would never have wanted this. He loved me. He wanted me to be looked after. Leo is dead," she stated flatly. "I'm alive, and this is my property. The deed is in my name as the surviving spouse." I looked past her into the brightly lit hall where Leo and I had shared so many talks during his illness. The workshop he had built for me was visible through the kitchen window, holding thousands of dollars worth of tools I'd hardly had a chance to use. "My tools? My workshop? Your workshop is on my property. You can make arrangements to have it all moved after you find a new place to live. Where am I supposed to go? It's almost 7 o'clock on the day of my son's funeral. That's not my concern. She moved just enough to grip the doorknob. Your things are packed. Your tenancy is over. If you're not off my property in 15 minutes, I'm calling the police for trespassing. The casual cruelty in her voice was stunning. This woman had shared meals at my table, accepted my help during Leo's sickness, and smiled and played the role of the devoted wife, all while planning this very moment. I walked down to my old Toyota Camry and started loading the suitcases into the trunk and back seat. My entire life now fit into 3 bags: clothes, some books, photos of Leo, and the small box of model airplanes we had built together when he was a boy. Claire watched from the doorway, her silhouette outlined by the warm light of the house that was no longer my home. She didn't offer to help. She didn't say a word. She just waited for me to be gone. As I shut the trunk, she called out one last thing. "Don't come back without an appointment, Arthur. This is private property now." The door shut with a solid thud, followed by the sound of locks being engaged. One by one, the lights in the house went out, as if she were systematically erasing my existence from every room I had inhabited. I sat in my car for a minute, the engine running, the heater blowing warm air on my face. Through the window I could see the workshop Leo had built, the tools gleaming in the dark. I had spent 18 months of my life in that house, caring for my son, watching him fight, fail, and die with dignity. Now, on the day of his funeral, I was homeless. The radio played quiet jazz as I drove away from Brookside, heading toward Denver's less expensive motels. In my rearview mirror, the Vance estate shrank until it vanished, taking with it the last tangible link to my son's life. But Claire had made one critical error. She had revealed her strategy too soon. Leo had been planning something with Martin Cole, and tomorrow I was going to find out what it was. The flickering neon sign of the Mountain View Motel that read vacancy was a beacon in the encroaching darkness. I had driven for 2 hours through Denver's outskirts, checking rates at motels that became progressively more rundown as my choices dwindled. $65 a night was affordable for a few days, but my limited savings wouldn't last long. The man at the front desk didn't even look up from his magazine as I checked in. Room 127 was at the end of the building, situated between a loud ice machine and a stairwell that smelled of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. Inside, the room was a step back in time, with a faded floral comforter, cheap wood veneer furniture, and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around. The contrast with the luxurious home I'd left just hours before would have been funny if it weren't so tragic. I unpacked my things methodically, hanging my funeral suit in the small closet and setting my few possessions on the desk by the window. The rental agreement lay on the scratched surface like evidence from a crime. Under the harsh light, Leo's signature looked even more authentic, more damning. Outside, the steady drone of highway traffic was punctuated by the occasional sound of a truck gearing down or a motorcycle speeding toward the city. The noise was strangely comforting, a reminder that the world continued on even when your own life had come to a halt. I located Martin Cole's business card in my wallet, tucked behind a picture of Leo at his college graduation. The card was worn, but the phone number was still clear. An old rotary phone sat on the nightstand, another anachronism that seemed to fit my circumstances. Martin answered on the third ring, his voice professional and warm despite the late hour. "Cole and Partners. Martin speaking. Martin, this is Arthur Vance. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need legal advice." "Arthur?" His tone immediately shifted to one of genuine concern. My deepest sympathies about Leo. He was a remarkable young man. "What's happened?" I described the eviction, the rental agreement, and Claire's cold-blooded timing. Martin listened without interrupting, making small sounds of affirmation that let me know he was taking detailed notes. "Is this legal?" I asked when I was done. "Can she really just throw me out on the day of the funeral?" "Unfortunately, if the rental agreement is valid, she does have the legal authority to end the tenancy upon the landlord's passing. Colorado law is very clear on month-to-month leases." He paused, and I could hear papers shuffling. "However, there are other matters we must discuss. Can you be in my office tomorrow morning? What sort of matters? The reading of Leo's will. There are some provisions you need to be aware of. Something in his voice made my heart race. Provisions. I can't go into details over the phone, but Leo was extremely thorough in his estate planning. Very considerate of the people he cared for. Another pause. Bring the rental agreement with you. I need to look it over carefully. We set the appointment for 10 the next morning. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the lumpy motel bed staring out at the parking lot where my Camry was parked among pickup trucks and older sedans. A family was unloading their luggage 2 doors down, a mother, father, and 2 young children who seemed thrilled by their motel adventure. I thought of Leo's final words. Trust Martin, he'll explain everything. At the time, I thought he was referring to funeral plans or simple estate details. But Martin's tone suggested my son had been planning something far more significant. The photo of Leo at his graduation smiled at me from the nightstand. 22 years old, full of ambition and drive, standing next to me in his cap and gown. He had whispered something to me that day. Dad, one day I'm going to take care of you the way you've always taken care of me. Perhaps he had found a way to honor that promise, even from beyond the grave. I switched off the glaring overhead light and leaned back against the thin pillows. Through the wall, I could hear a television playing a sitcom and the faint sounds of the family next door getting settled for the night. Tomorrow I would find out what Leo had truly been planning in those secretive meetings with Martin. Tonight I would try to get some rest and brace myself for whatever tomorrow would bring. 4 days at the Mountain View Motel had familiarized me with the routine of desperation. Waking up at dawn to the sound of traffic, showering in a stall barely big enough for my frame, drinking instant coffee and eating stale pastries from a vending machine, counting the dwindling cash in my wallet and calculating how many more nights I could stay. April the 20th was gray and cold, but it felt different. Today promised answers. I dressed with care in my best suit. The navy one Leo had made me buy for his wedding 7 years ago. The irony was not lost on me. In the cracked motel mirror, I looked exactly like what I was, a 65-year-old man trying to hold on to his dignity while staying in a $65 a night room. The drive downtown took 45 minutes in the morning rush hour. Denver's skyline slowly came into view, glass towers stretching toward a cloudy sky that threatened rain. I had driven these roads countless times in my engineering career, but today it felt like I was entering a foreign land. Cole & Partners was located on the 28th floor of a modern office building downtown. The elevator ride gave me time to compose myself and go over the questions I had prepared. Martin had been vague on the phone, alluding to surprises and provisions without giving any details. The reception area radiated wealth and expensive legal counsel, with dark wood furniture, original art, and a view of the Cherry Creek Reservoir that likely cost more per month than my pension. The receptionist, a poised woman in her 30s, smiled warmly as I gave my name. "Mr. Vance, Mr. Cole is waiting for you. Conference room B." Martin stood up from a table laden with legal files as I walked in. He was younger than I had imagined, perhaps 55, with graying temples and the assured handshake of someone who managed other people's problems for a living. "Arthur, thank you for coming." His voice held genuine warmth beneath its professional surface. "Please have a seat. Coffee?" "Thank you." I sat in a leather chair that was probably worth more than my monthly rent. "Martin, I need to know where I stand. Claire has made it clear she sees me as a problem to be dealt with." He poured coffee from a silver carafe, his movements steady and reassuring. "Leo left a very comprehensive will. There will be some surprises." "What kind of surprises?" "Claire claims everything is hers as the surviving spouse. Leo foresaw a number of outcomes." Martin's smile was subtle but encouraging. "Trust the process, Arthur. Your son was exceptionally meticulous." I took out the rental agreement Claire had given me. "What about this? Can she really kick me out because Leo was my landlord?" Martin studied the papers, his expression unreadable. "The rental agreement seems to be in order. However, inheritance law is complicated. There are safeguards for family members that can override a simple landlord-tenant contract." "What about the house? Can I go back?" "Stay at the motel for now." His tone was firm but kind. "Everything will be resolved very soon. I've set the formal will reading for this Friday at 2 o'clock. All interested parties will be present. All parties? You, Claire, and any witnesses Leo named, Sam Peterson from the company, Helen Bishop as a family friend. He jotted notes on a legal pad. The reading will be recorded for legal purposes. Relief and anxiety warred within me. Martin, I appreciate your help, but I have to ask about your fees. My funds are very limited. Leo took care of all legal costs related to his estate. You don't need to worry about money. Martin's smile widened slightly. Your son thought of everything, Arthur. Absolutely everything. His tone implied layers of meaning I couldn't yet decipher. Leo had always been a planner, but the precision of these arrangements felt almost otherworldly. Will Claire have her own lawyer? I would assume so. She is entitled to legal counsel during estate matters. Martin organized the documents into tidy piles. Arthur, I want you to know something important. Leo loved you very much. Every single provision in his will is a reflection of that love. The words struck me harder than I expected. 4 days of anger and fear had temporarily numbed my grief, but Martin's quiet conviction brought it flooding back. My son had been protecting me even as he battled cancer, even as his wife plotted my ruin. Friday at 2 o'clock, Martin confirmed, giving me an appointment card. E28th floor, conference room A. Bring your identification and any papers you feel might be relevant. I stood up to leave, feeling more grounded than I had since the funeral. Martin, can you give me any clue as to what Leo planned? Trust your son's judgment. His handshake was solid and final. He knew exactly what he was doing. The elevator ride down felt different. Instead of desperation, I felt a cautious optimism. Leo had been several steps ahead of everyone during his illness, and that apparently included his wife. Driving back to the motel through the afternoon traffic, I contemplated Friday's meeting. Claire would show up expecting total victory, likely flanked by expensive lawyers. She had spent 4 days plotting her next moves, certain of her position. But Leo had been planning for much longer. Friday morning brought a biting wind that made April feel like the last gasp of winter. I had spent the past 3 days in the motel in a state of suspended animation, too nervous to read, too agitated to sleep, and too broke to do anything but wait. By 11, I was in my funeral suit again, assessing my reflection in the motel's unforgiving mirror. The face staring back at me showed all of my 65 years plus the strain of the last week. But there was something in my eyes that hadn't been there since Leo's diagnosis. Resolve. The drive downtown was different this time. I was heading toward answers, not just a lawyer's office. Whatever Leo had set in motion, today would reveal his final masterpiece. I arrived at Cole & Partners 15 minutes early, driven by a mix of nerves and respect for the gravity of the occasion. The same receptionist greeted me with professional courtesy, guiding me to conference room A, a larger space with a panoramic view of the city. Martin was already there, surrounded by stacks of documents and what looked like audio recording gear. He was calm but focused, like a surgeon before a major operation. Arthur, right on time. He pointed to a chair opposite the head of the table. The others should be here soon. The others turned out to be a procession of individuals whose reactions would shape the afternoon. Sam Peterson came first, looking ill at ease in a suit, clearly preferring to be writing code. Helen Bishop followed, clutching a small purse, her expression that of someone braced for family conflict. Then came Claire. She entered the room as if she were arriving at her own coronation, wearing a chic black suit that was both somber and celebratory. Trailing her was a sharp-featured woman in her 40s carrying a briefcase that exuded high-powered law. Eleanor Finch, the woman introduced herself with a brisk handshake. I am representing Mrs. Vance's interests in this matter. Claire took her seat with the smug air of someone who had already won. She barely glanced at me, her attention fixed on the legal files at Martin's end of the table. Her smile was subtle but clear. Arthur, why did you even bother coming? There's nothing for you here. The words were delivered with a casual cruelty that everyone could hear. Eleanor Finch placed a calming hand on her client's arm, but the comment had landed. Sam shifted in his seat. Helen's face hardened. I'm here by my legal right as Leo's father, I replied calmly. Legal right to what? You were a tenant in my house. That arrangement concluded with my husband's death. Claire's voice was full of unshakable confidence. Eleanor has examined all the paperwork. Everything belongs to me as the surviving spouse. Martin cleared his throat, his professional authority silencing the room. Please, everyone. Leo's will is extremely precise regarding all distributions. Let us proceed in an orderly fashion. Eleanor Finch opened her briefcase, taking out legal pads and what seemed to be prepared objections. My client anticipates receiving the entire estate as the legal wife. We are ready to challenge any unusual provisions. Duly noted, Martin said. He started the recording device. This is the formal reading of the last will and testament of Leo Arthur Vance, dated January 15, 2023. Present are Arthur Vance, father. Claire Vance, surviving spouse. Eleanor Finch, attorney for Mrs. Vance. Sam Peterson and Helen Bishop, designated witnesses. The room quieted, the only sound the distant hum of traffic from below. Claire leaned forward, her posture radiating confidence. I held the arms of my chair, braced for disappointment but hoping for justice. Martin opened the thick document, his voice adopting the formal tone of legal proceedings. I, Leo Arthur Vance, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this as my final will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The initial legal jargon was just background noise to me. My engineer's mind was focused on the core details that would decide whether I would spend my final years in a motel or in a home. Claire's fingers tapped a silent rhythm on the table, counting down to her victory. But Martin's faint smile suggested the afternoon held surprises none of us anticipated. We now come to the specific bequests and distributions, Martin announced, turning to the critical pages. The moment of truth had arrived. To my beloved wife, Claire Vance, Martin's voice was clear and measured in the silent room. I bequeath the following assets: the family residence at 1247 Aspen Grove Drive, Brookside, Colorado, including all contents and personal property. All vehicles currently registered in my name, including the 2023 Audi Q8 and the 2022 Rivian R1T. The checking and savings accounts at First Bank of Denver with a total of approximately $380,000. Claire's smile blossomed. She sat back in her chair, visibly pleased, and shot a triumphant look at me. See, Arthur, I told you there would be nothing for you. Eleanor Finch was taking notes, her expression one of routine satisfaction. Sam Peterson stared at his lap, likely contemplating the business impact of Claire's inheritance. Helen Bishop watched me with sympathy, expecting me to be crushed. Martin continued reading, ignoring Claire's comment. Additionally, Mrs. Vance is to receive all jewelry, art, and collectibles acquired during our marriage, valued at approximately $95,000. Martin, Claire said sweetly, I believe we've covered the important parts. Arthur can see that Leo was quite clear about his wishes. Actually, Martin responded calmly, we have only addressed the initial distributions. There are further bequests. He turned the page slowly. To my father, Arthur Vance, who sacrificed 18 months of his retirement to care for me during my illness. My heart lurched. Leo had remembered. Even as he was dying, he had protected me. I bequeath 50% ownership of Nexus Core Dynamics, including all shares, voting rights, and dividend payments. This currently represents an approximate market value of $40 million. The silence that followed was absolute. The color drained from Claire's face. Eleanor Finch's pen stopped mid-sentence. Sam Peterson's head snapped up, his expression a mix of shock and what looked like relief. What? Claire's voice was a harsh crack. That's not possible. I'm his wife. It should all come to me. Martin went on as if she hadn't spoken. Additionally, Mr. Arthur Vance is to receive the workshop and all tools built for his use to be moved to a property of his choosing. All model aircraft collections we built together during Leo's childhood, and the sum of $150,000 from the Memorial Education Fund. I couldn't process it. 50% of Leo's company, $40 million, the workshop he built for my retirement. After a week of homelessness and despair, my son had given me more security than I had ever imagined. This is a fraud. Claire sprang to her feet, her composure completely shattered. I will fight this. You manipulated him, you conniving old man. Claire, I managed to say through my astonishment, This is legal. Leo had the right to distribute his property as he saw fit. Legal? Her laugh was sharp and hateful. You think I'll let you steal half of what is rightfully mine? Eleanor, tell them this is contestable. Eleanor Finch was frantically reviewing her notes, clearly reevaluating her entire approach. There might be grounds for an undue influence claim, but nothing. Claire's voice rose to a shout. Leo was sick, dying. His mind was not clear. This old man took advantage of him. Sam Peterson finally spoke up, his voice low but steady. Claire, I was present at several of Leo's business meetings near the end. His mind was perfectly sharp. He knew exactly what he was doing. You're all in on it. Claire spun to face Martin. How much did Arthur pay you to fabricate this? Martin's voice remained professional despite her outburst. Mrs. Vance, I understand your disappointment, but these distributions were entirely Leo's decision. He spent a great deal of time ensuring every detail was legally airtight. Claire turned back to me, her eyes burning with a rage that made her earlier cruelty seem trivial. You think you've won? I will take everything from you. Every dollar, every share, every tool. By the time my lawyers are done, you'll be living in that motel for the rest of your pathetic life. Helen Bishop reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. Leo loved you so much, she whispered. But Martin was arranging his papers, not yet finished. Mrs. Vance, please sit down. We have not concluded the reading. What else could there possibly be? Claire remained standing, her hands planted on the table like weapons. Martin's smile was faint but definite. There is one final condition that supersedes all previous distributions. The atmosphere in the room grew instantly colder. Whatever final move Leo had planned, Martin was about to reveal it. Martin's faint smile grew as he selected another document from his meticulously organized pile. The conference room was utterly silent, save for the hum of the recording device and Claire's ragged breathing, as she struggled with the news of the shared inheritance. There is one last clause in the will, Martin stated, his voice carrying the gravity of a final judgment. A special provision that Leo included 3 weeks before he passed. Claire's eyes narrowed. What provision? You're hiding something. The condition stipulates, Martin read with deliberate clarity, that if my wife Claire attempts to force my father Arthur to vacate our family home within 1 year of my death, the entire inheritance, including the house, vehicles, bank accounts, and company shares, shall automatically transfer in its entirety to Arthur Vance. The silence that followed was profound. Even the street noise from 28 floors below seemed to have vanished. The blood drained from Claire's face as the full weight of the clause crushed her. No, she whispered in desperate disbelief. This is a trap. He couldn't have known. Leo also left a video recording to explain his reasoning, Martin continued, setting up a small screen. He wanted you to understand his decision. The monitor came to life, showing Leo's familiar face, thinner than before his illness, but with eyes still sharp with intellect and affection. My heart ached seeing my son again, hearing his voice from beyond the grave. Claire, if you are seeing this, it means you have evicted my father from our home. Leo's voice was gentle but firm. I had hoped you would prove me wrong. I hoped the woman I married would show some compassion in her grief, but I know you too well. Claire was now hyperventilating, her hands clenching the table. Eleanor Finch was furiously writing notes, her face a mask of professional dismay at her client's complete legal ruin. Dad, Leo went on, looking straight at the camera with the engineer's precision I taught him, I am sorry you had to endure her cruelty, but I have protected you. Everything I built, everything I earned, it is all yours now. Use it wisely, live well. Honor Mom's memory in that house. The video paused, and Martin's calm voice filled the stunned room. The eviction took place on April 15th, the day of Leo's funeral. The condition was therefore triggered. All assets are transferred to Arthur Vance, effective immediately. This isn't legal. Claire's voice rose to a shriek. A will can't have conditions like that. Actually, it can, Martin countered smoothly. Conditional inheritance is perfectly legal in Colorado, provided the conditions are clearly articulated and not contrary to public policy. Leo consulted extensively to ensure this was enforceable. Eleanor Finch finally spoke. We will challenge this immediately. Undue influence, diminished capacity, fraudulent. The video continues, Martin interrupted, pressing play. Leo smiled sadly from the screen. Claire, I loved you for 7 years. I gave you everything I had. But love without kindness is merely ownership. Dad taught me to treat people with dignity, especially family. I had hoped our marriage would teach you the same. Claire made a choking noise and slumped forward as if she had been physically struck. If you had shown my dad even basic decency after my death, you would have inherited everything. But I knew your character. I wagered that your greed would overpower your sense of judgment. Leo's expression was sorrowful, but resolute. I lost that wager, but Dad has won his future. The video ended with Leo saying softly, I love you both, but I will always protect those who love others more than they love themselves. Martin turned off the screen and addressed the shattered room. The legal transfer will begin at once. Mrs. Vance, you have 30 days to vacate the property. Claire's breathing grew rapid and shallow. Her eyes rolled back and she collapsed in her chair. Eleanor Finch caught her as she fainted, calling out for help. As paramedics were called and Claire was revived, I sat motionless, stunned by the depth of my son's love and foresight. He had known exactly who his wife was and precisely how she would act. Even while dying, he had protected me with surgical precision. Sam Peterson broke the silence. Leo was always 3 steps ahead of everyone. Helen reached over and squeezed my hand. He saved you, Arthur. Even from the grave, he saved you. Claire was escorted from the room by paramedics, with Eleanor Finch following, her professional demeanor defeated. As they left, Martin began preparing the documents for the immediate legal transfer. I remained in my chair, staring at the blank screen where my son's face had just been. Leo had given me everything, security, dignity, and the profound certainty that his love would shield me forever. The game was over. Justice had been delivered by the most loving hand I had ever known. The following 2 months were a masterclass in legal futility. Despite losing everything by her own hand, Claire launched a challenge against Leo's will with the desperation of someone drowning in the consequences of her actions. Eleanor Finch's law firm occupied an entire floor of a high-rise on 16th Street Mall, their lobby adorned with awards, but all their legal prowess couldn't overcome one simple fact. Leo had been smarter than all of them. The conditional clause is discriminatory, Eleanor argued at the first hearing on May 2nd. It penalizes my client for exercising her legal rights as a property owner. Judge Rebecca Shaw, a woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documents with sharp precision. The decider had every legal right to set conditions for inheritance. Counselor, nothing in Colorado law prohibits conditional bequests based on a beneficiary's behavior. I attended every hearing, watching Claire's legal team try every possible angle. Undue influence, diminished capacity, fraudulent documents, discriminatory terms. Each argument fell apart under Martin's systematic defense and the powerful video evidence of Leo's clear intent. Mr. Vance, Martin had explained to me, Leo spent 3 months perfecting this language to withstand any challenge. He consulted with estate planners, constitutional lawyers, and even behavioral psychologists. This will is ironclad. The discovery process unearthed damning evidence for Claire's case. Witnesses testified about her conduct at the funeral. Sam Peterson described her growing distance during Leo's illness. Helen Bishop spoke of years observing Claire's materialistic nature. Even Mrs. Davies from the church provided a statement about inappropriate remarks she'd overheard. The deceased showed clear mental capacity throughout his illness, testified Dr. Evans, Leo's oncologist. Mr. Vance continued to make complex business decisions until just weeks before his death. His cognitive abilities were never compromised. Claire's own testimony was a disaster. Under oath, she couldn't deny evicting me on the day of the funeral. She had no explanation for her absence during Leo's medical treatments. Most damaging of all, she admitted to spending inheritance money on legal fees before the will was even probated. So, you accessed estate funds immediately after your husband's death? Martin asked during his cross-examination. I had expenses, Claire retorted, her composure cracking. Funeral costs, legal consultations, including the retainer for challenging the will you assumed would grant you everything. Eleanor Finch's objection was sustained, but the point had been made. Claire had displayed the exact mentality Leo had anticipated and protected me from. By early June, even Eleanor Finch was recommending a settlement. "Arthur, this isn't finished," Claire vowed after another failed motion. "I will find another way to fight you." But her funds were dwindling as fast as her legal avenues. The prestigious law firm demanded hefty retainers, and expert witnesses were expensive. Meanwhile, my legal fees were covered by the estate, giving us unlimited resources. The final hearing on June 15th was brief. Judge Shaw had made her decision based on the overwhelming evidence of Leo's mental soundness, the will's legal validity, and Claire's clear triggering of the conditional clause. "The testator created a legal document expressing his clear intentions," Judge Shaw announced. "The conditional inheritance clause was properly executed when the surviving spouse evicted the testator's father from the family home. All challenges are dismissed. Costs are awarded against the petitioner." Claire's shoulders slumped as the gavel fell. 2 months of costly legal battles had ended exactly as Leo's video had predicted, with her losing everything because of her own choices. Martin and I stood in the courthouse hallway afterward, watching Claire and Eleanor Finch walk toward the elevators. She moved with the defeated posture of someone who had finally grasped the cost of cruelty. "Your son was remarkable," Martin said quietly. "In 30 years of estate law, I have never seen such thorough planning." "Leo always finished what he started," I replied, thinking of all the model planes we had built and all the projects he had completed with such precision. This had been his final project, ensuring justice through love, protection through wisdom, and consequences through choice. Even death could not stop my son from taking care of the people who mattered most. Justice had been served not by revenge, but by the simple truth that actions have consequences, and that love protects those who are worthy of it. July 1st was a clear, warm morning, the kind that signals summer has truly arrived in Denver. I stood on the porch of the Vance estate, holding the same keys Leo had given me 18 months ago when I moved in to care for him. This time, however, I was not a guest or a tenant. I was home. The lock turned, and the door opened into the same hallway where Claire had blocked my path just 2.5 months earlier. The house felt different now, not because of any physical changes, but because love and justice had reclaimed it from greed. Claire had moved out the week before with surprising quietness. Our last conversation was brief but polite. "You won, Arthur," she said, packing a jewelry box. "But Leo isn't coming back." "You're right," I replied, "but his love and wisdom will live on." She nodded slowly, perhaps finally grasping that this was never about winning, but about character and consequences. I had even helped her carry bags to her car because Leo had taught me to treat people with dignity, no matter how they had treated me. The house was peaceful now, filled with memories of Leo's life and accomplishments rather than the strain of his final months. I left his home office exactly as it was, and I was sitting there when Sam Peterson called to schedule our first official business meeting. "Arthur, I know you never intended to run a tech company," Sam said, "but Leo left detailed strategic plans for the next 5 years. With your guidance and my operational management, we can build something worthy of his legacy." What did he have in mind? Expanding into educational technology. Leo believed tech should help people learn, not just manage their time. We could develop platforms for engineering students, maybe form a partnership with the University of Colorado. The conversation lasted an hour, covering growth targets, hiring strategies, and Leo's notes on corporate philanthropy. My son had built more than a company. He had created an engine for positive change. As the majority owner, I could ensure that engine served a purpose beyond profit. "Sam, I want to establish something else," I said as we wrapped up. "The Leo Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund, full rides for engineering students from working-class backgrounds. Kids with the talent, but not the money." Leo would have loved that. After the call, I walked through the house, reacquainting myself with rooms that held a lifetime of memories. In the workshop Leo had built for me, I found a half-completed model airplane, a P-51 Mustang we had started on one of his better days. I sat at the workbench and picked up the small brushes, painting the wings the same vibrant blue Leo had chosen for his planes as a child. Helen Bishop visited that evening with a casserole, offering the kind of practical comfort that only family can provide. "How are you handling all of this?" she asked, settling into Leo's favorite armchair with a mug of tea. "It's overwhelming at times," I confessed. "The money, the company, the responsibility. But I keep hearing Leo's voice telling me to use it for good. He planned everything perfectly, didn't he?" "Better than perfect." He knew Claire would show her true colors, and he shielded me from it. Even as he was dying, he was looking out for his old dad. Helen smiled sadly. "That boy loved you more than anything." Later that night, I sat in Leo's office, reviewing the scholarship fund documents Martin had drafted. The program would provide full tuition, living expenses, and mentorship to 20 students each year. In a decade, we would have helped 200 bright young people achieve their dreams. The phone rang as I was finishing up. The caller ID was from the University of Colorado. "Mr. Vance, this is Professor Emily Rios. I wanted to personally thank you for creating the Memorial Scholarship. The first recipient is a young woman from the South Side whose father works 3 jobs. She reminds me so much of Leo, brilliant, driven, and passionate about using engineering to help others." After the call, I sat in the quiet twilight, looking at Leo's photo on the desk. At 22, he had been full of dreams to change the world. Now, even after his death, he was making those dreams a reality for others. Outside, Brookside settled into a peaceful evening. The house felt full of purpose, not empty with loss. Leo's love had created not just justice, but lasting hope. Claire's cruelty had been transformed into opportunity for deserving students. I picked up the small P-51 Mustang model and painted one last blue stripe on its wing. Some traditions are worth preserving, some love is worth honoring, and some justice is worth the wait. Leo had been right about everything. Love protects, wisdom endures, and sometimes, if you plan carefully enough, you can continue to take care of the people you love long after you are gone. The old workshop hummed around me, and I could almost hear my son's voice. "Looking good, Dad, but maybe a little more blue on the tail."